Hello, everybody. This is Sineve, and I'm coming to you with Touch, a Ticci, Toby, X-Reader by KissedByRain. We're starting off with chapter 37. Toby is furious. His expression would be enough to make her flinch if she didn't know him. His goggles and mouth guard are off, showing his dark glaring eyes and furrowed eyebrows. His mouth formed in a snarl. He has a hatchet out, held in a tight grip. I'm going to kill you. Wyan feels like she's going to pass out any second. Her head falls forward, wet hair covering her face and sticking to her cold, flushed cheeks. You don't want to do that, or I'll have to hurt little Wyan here even more. Tim laughs a little, grabbing a fistful of her tangled hair, lifting her head up. Her tear-filled eyes meet Toby's, and she sees him hesitate as he lowers his hatchet. She sees the conflict in his frustrated expression before he slowly hangs his weapon back on his belt. She hears Tim begin to talk again, but doesn't listen as her eyes slowly start to close in exhaustion. She was so tired and felt lightheaded. Sleep sounded so nice. Just as she was about to pass out, Tim lightly slaps her face, making her lift her head. Don't fall asleep now. I'm about to tell you why Tobias has been leaving you alone for days. Don't you want to know where he's been going to? He asks her like Toby wasn't standing right there, like he wasn't holding a knife to her throat. He speaks to her as if she were a close friend. She can't trust a word he says, but when she sees Toby freeze up at his words, she wills herself to stay awake now, curious at what Tim had to say. Well, as I was saying, Tobias was at a bar drinking his worries away and come across a man. He started talking to him and found out that this man was no other than your father. Why, and guess what? He killed him days later after stalking him, even with knowing who he was. Tim speaks, looking down at her to see his reaction. She doesn't believe him. He would never do that. Wyan looks up at Toby to see if what he said was true. He avoids her eyes. Toby? She whispers as softly as the rain fell, which was slowly starting to lighten up into a gentle drizzle. When she sees Toby's expression, she knows Tim wasn't lying. And he doesn't deny it, he doesn't meet her gaze, he just stands still, with eyes filled to the brim with guilt. Toby killed her father. Her only remaining family was dead. Sometimes she hated her father, yes, but she would never want him killed. She never wished death upon anyone, except Saskia. She felt more than hurt, betrayal maybe. Her breathing became shaky, and she bites her lip to try to hold herself together, yet the world around her was falling apart. The scenery around her becomes blurry, her heart felt numb yet ached at the same time. Tim chuckles. Tobias, she's speechless. You fucked up. Your little girlfriend is never going to forgive you now. For the millionth time today, she starts to cry. Her whole body shakes as she feels Tim release his grip on her. No sobs escape her. She only needs tears to lament over the man that abandoned her. She hated that she still loved him even after leaving her. She could never let go of the happy memories they shared. She got too attached to people, just like she had with Toby. This all happened because she was stupid enough to become friends with a murderer. She was stupid to fall in love with one. She was so stupid. What did she think would happen? She thought he would love her the same. She thought she would wake up to kisses and breakfast in bed, and she thought maybe she could be normal. And if becoming normal was to become lovers with a murderer, then she was willing enough to take the risk. But now she just loved him for being him, for being there for her when she needed him, when she needed some type of reassurance. Wyan feels a hand land on her shoulder, and she looks up to see Toby standing in front of her. She flinches away from him. Don't touch me. Even if it hurt, she couldn't bring herself to hate him. Not even looking up at him again, she turns away. She didn't want to see him right now. She doesn't want to talk to him, but she needs answers. She doesn't know what to do. How long were you going to keep this from me? She asks Toby weakly, still shaking from both the pain and cold. Before he can reply, she asks, were you ever going to tell me that you killed my father? I was going to tell you. I just thought what? She snaps, finally looking up to meet his eyes. You would have just waited until I figured it out myself. You probably would have never even told me if I hadn't figured it out. He looks pained, but she doesn't give much thought to it. Let me explain, please. There's nothing to explain. You killed the only family I had left. Ryan looks away from him. His expression was getting to her. It was too painful. Her vision was starting to slowly go out, and her lightheadedness slowly catching up to her. It grew silent. The rain was lighter and misty now, as if it knew of her hardships both behind and ahead, so it fell softly on the world below, setting its pity on all who despise it or yearn for attention from it. Each small droplet alighted on her skin with just enough coolness to command her mind to the present, to pull her away from the pain. As much as I want to see this go down, I'm afraid you two are out of time. Master is coming to retrieve you both. The sudden voice of Tim, who was feet away, startles her, and she forgot he was here. Toby curses loudly, running a hand through his matted down hair. and Tim pulls his mask down to hide his smile. You better start running, Tobias. He's walking away further into the dense trees. Not even seconds later, Toby hurries over to her. Sunshine, I know you don't want to, but we need to get out of here quickly. His words are rushed in panic. She glares at him with cold eyes. Don't call me Sunshine. I'd rather die than go with you. Just leave me here. She was angry now. The sadness of loss was buried deep in her mind. The anger deprived her. Wyan, please. He looks at her with pleading eyes, and she is surprised to see tears running down his face, and it stabs her in the heart. But even if his expression broke her, she knew she couldn't go with him. She couldn't trust him anymore. Chapter 38. Toby, just go. She speaks quietly. Her voice speaks of broken, tattered words. She wouldn't admit it to herself, but she didn't want him to go. Suddenly feeling faint, she wobbles from her sitting position and onto her side, a sudden headache piercing her skull, enough to make her wince. Blood loss was slowly getting to her, and she knew she wouldn't last much longer if her wounds went untreated. Before she can do anything else, she is lifted off the ground by Toby, and he carries her against his chest, and the sudden warmth of being by him almost makes her smile until she became aware of what was happening. Toby, put me down. She weakly pushes her hands on his chest, her words trailing off as she feels herself slipping away. Toby looks down at her with a pained smile. Just let me get you out of here, okay? I'll leave after, and I'll leave you alone, okay? She doesn't want him to leave and can't find the strength to say anything, and she goes limp in his arms. She can't think straight right now, and she knows she's losing blood quickly from her thigh. She's angry at him and wants him to leave, but at the same time, she just wants him to stay forever. And Toby starts to run. She thinks she's passed out while Toby is running because she no longer felt the rain hitting her face when her eyes open. She gazes up at him, water dripping off his chin and hair, her mouth slightly gaped open, taking in soft breaths. She forgets he killed her father just long enough to call out his name. He looks down at her, and all the anger returns the minute she sees his face, the guilt, red-rimmed eyes, and cold, pale skin. She's reminded of what happened. Wyan was too weak to find the effort to move or struggle away from him. She would never forgive him, but knew she would never stop loving him. Her feelings were confusing her. She couldn't think straight in her numb and faint state. She knows there's more to the story of why he did it, and there had to be a reason, and he wouldn't do it without a good reason. The sound of water could be heard in the distance, or river. She can smell it. The air was getting more misty and damp despite it raining just minutes ago. The peacefulness doesn't go uninterrupted. However, static is all she could describe it. The static was growing louder. Her heart jumped into her throat. Static clouded her already blurry vision. It was painful, especially to her ears. It felt as if they were bleeding. Maybe they were. He instantaneously stops running once in a clearing, and Wyan had to move her head up to see where they were. A cliff. It was a dead end. The sound of rushing water was definitely coming from the bottom of the cliff. A river. Shit. She hears him mutter to himself. The static was worse. Toby, do you hear that? She questions him, referring to the static growing louder quickly. She was swooning, ready to pass out again. His head snaps down at her. Hear what? He looks confused and startled. The static, it hurts. Her head falls back against his chest, her eyes closing briefly before she saw his expression. It's silent for a short moment, yet long enough for her to open her eyes again. Toby isn't looking at her. He's looking over his shoulder, his face paler than usual, and he was staring at something in the trees. A noise sounds in her ears like white noise. It's piercing, enough to make her gasp quietly and out in alarm. It felt as if her ears were about to explode. Toby, what is that noise? We have to jump. Her eyes go wide. What? He's here. Hang on. He runs forward to the ledge, her hands moving to hold onto him tightly, to hold on to anything. Free falling was a weird feeling, like flying. She thinks that, as she looks up, the ledge they were just growing smaller, like birds even. The sky was pink. Just as her body comes to contact with the water, she sees it, this creature, or thing. It was tall, it was freakishly tall, and as soon as she sees it, it's gone as quick as she blinks her eyes. All at once there's water surrounding her form, and she's inhaling unclean water. She's not holding on to Toby anymore. Her grip on him had slipped, and she doesn't know where he is. Wyan moves her one usable arm like she's climbing rocks, but it's only water around her, water that washes around her body, preventing access to precious air. She tries desperately to move up, but she only seems to be sinking further and is pushed with the current. After only a few seconds, her brain is in full panic mode. There are no coordinated movements, just clawing through the thin liquid that threatens to invade her lungs. From her lips comes an explosion of air bubbles when she can no longer hold her breath, moving away from her at a peculiar angle. She almost realizes she isn't facing upwards, that she's struggling upside down to the surface, but already her thoughts are groggy. Her arm and legs slow down, stop, and she floats in the current like a doll. At the corner of her eye, she sees her small journal floating away, being pulled by the current. Maybe it was time to let go of her thoughts locked away in that journal, to let go of the past, to let go of her father, and to forgive Toby. A hand clasps her wrist, and she's unaware, but slowly she is towed upward to the daylight above. Only then, when her head almost reaches above the rushing water, does she feel herself pass out. That is the end of those 2 chapters. The next chapter after that is chapter 39. Let me know how you guys feel about that, because that is a wind whirl of, oh my gosh. But I will see you guys in the next video, and I'll hurry to get them out for you. Bye bye!